Welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, I'm Preena Shah, the founder of Patterns of the Mind, a mental health and well-being consultancy focusing on improving organizational culture through self-understanding. Today I'm going in deep. We're going to be talking about the transition between corporate to entrepreneurship. No fluff, no filters, the highs, the heartbreaks, the lows, and most importantly, the one thing that kept me grounded, self-understanding. This isn't just a personal story. It's a toolkit, a lesson for anyone who's on this journey, who wants to start to go on this journey, but also so businesses can see how I'm using self-understanding to change the way I work. This is also a reminder that knowing yourself isn't just nice to have, it is your greatest asset. So let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is life in the corporate bubble, what I had then. So for those of you who don't know, I worked at KPMG for 6 years. I was in the M&A sector, so working on helping companies buy and sell the bits of it and whatnot. And I was there and I left. When I left, I was a manager. KPMG was safe. I had a salary that came in every month like clockwork. I didn't have to worry about anything but what my role was. My role was to deliver financial due diligence services to clients. And then obviously as I grew in my team and went from graduate to manager, then I started having to coach people, teach people, mentor people, and things like that. But I never had to worry about bringing in the client. That was the partners and directors' job. I never had to worry about what's KPMG's brand like today, what's its reputation, how are we marketing it. I didn't have to worry about what KPMG's strategy was because that's up to the partners as well. I didn't have to worry about internal conflicts with other employees, not between myself, but if someone else was having an issue, I obviously would help because that's who I am, but I didn't really have to worry about that. But I would like to add though, when I was at KPMG, everyone used to say I just love doing extracurricular activities. I'm that sort of person, I can't just do the one thing, so I couldn't just do my job. I needed to have more to feel like I was doing a lot. And I don't know if that makes sense. But I've always been like that, even growing up. I didn't just focus on education. I was always part of the sports team, music. I used to do dancing, and anything you could name it. I would do every single extracurricular activity because that really kept me going. So when I was at KPMG, during COVID in 2020, I think we'd all gone back into working from home, and we weren't you wouldn't see your colleagues, right? It was all remote working, and I felt very disconnected from the team because prior to COVID, we'd obviously go into the office Monday to Friday and you'd see your colleagues and you know what's kind of happening in people's lives, obviously not to the full detail, but you would see people. And during COVID, kind of lost that interaction. So no one knew what was happening in my life. I didn't know what was happening in their life. And it was just a bit of a disconnect. So, and I also saw some people were struggling with things that they were going on in their personal life, or just work was a bit tough. And so I asked the people leader in my team, and that's basically the person who takes care of the team. Her job is to make sure we're all okay, performing well and things like that. And I just said, can I just start a few things under the mental health area because I want to help people? And she said, yeah, sure, why not? So one of the first things I started doing was sending daily affirmations to team members who wanted them. And it'd just be that every Monday morning when you switched on your laptop, you'd get a message from me, and it was just a daily affirmation, or a powerful quote, and just saying how amazing you are, or even though that there are tough times, good things happen later, and just things like that. And loads of people appreciated them. Actually, more people outside of the department started hearing and would be like, can I please be involved in your email chain? And by the time I left, I think there were over 200 people on that email chain, which was really cool. Then the other thing I started doing was podcasting in my team. And that was really fun. I really enjoyed that because basically what I would do is I would get someone from the team to come and talk about something in their lives, and they could pick whatever topic. And I would basically interview them, and that meant that the team started getting to know each other. So that was really fun. But yeah, at the end of the day, I could do all of these. I still did my job really well on top of that. I made sure my client delivery side never went down on top with all of these extracurricular things I was doing. But you know what? I just didn't have to worry about anything because like I said, there's other people to take care of things. Even like, for example, if something went on wrong, like in the tech aspect, I'll just call the tech or the IT team and be like, how do I fix this? And then they tell me what to do. And it was really good. And also, when you're going in the corporate journey, you're learning a lot. But if you don't know something, you have someone to go to and ask them, like, how do I do XYZ, because I don't know how to do it. So it was a very safe job, I guess you can say that, right? Don't get me wrong though, I had to work my butt off. I did work extremely long hours, but like I said, no worries about salary, no worries about anything. When I quit, I think I really underestimated how hard it is to start your own business. First of all, there's no like manual on what to do from step 1 to step 2. I had to figure so much stuff out, which I don't even think I've still figured out a lot of it. And you just kind of take it by each day right now. But like I said, there's no one who says, oh, like the first thing you should do is like go to company's house and register your name. You have to worry about trademarks, IP protection and things like that. You need lawyers involved. I didn't know any of this. I had to do a lot of research. I remember one of the most naive things, and I'm okay to admit it, one of the most naive things that happened when I left KPMG. In my head, I genuinely was like, you know what, it's fine, I'm going to quit. And then in 1 or 2 months, I'm going to have clients, and then we're going to be bankrolling. And next thing I know, in like a year's time, I'm going to be like £1 million company. And I remember I was really excited, okay? And I think, I was just naive, like I said. And I remember I was talking to my uncle, like he's done his MBA and he's extremely successful in his career. And I was just telling him, I want to do this is my business plan, blah, blah, blah. And then he took a step back and he was like, Prino, this is my word of advice that this is not going to be a business plan. Your business plan is going to change. No business that starts his business plan with that one will be the one that they end up with. It's going to change. He also gave me some books that he got when he was doing his MBA to read. And honestly, I kind of brushed it off because I was like, you know what? I know what I'm doing, and decided to be a smart ass. But yeah, well, guess what? I was very wrong. The first few months were brutal. I'm not going to lie, because I was still trying to figure out, okay, fine, how am I making my business plan solid? What's going to be my USP? And I was doing a lot of networking and trying to meet the right people. And I came across a few people who were actually really good and gave me a lot of insights. But I also came across people who were there literally to break me. I remember one meeting where I honestly thought it was just an introductory meeting, and I didn't realize that I had to pitch myself. And I remember when I was just talking about things like, for example, I would just say, oh, like, in my team I was doing this. And the other person just turned around saying, like, why are you saying it's your team? It's like you're running the team. You need to make things like clear. And I was just like, wait, because I was talking to someone who's not in the corporate world, and they just didn't understand the language. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, how do you not understand that when you say it's my team, you're part of a team? In corporate world, that is how you talk. And I had to learn, like, okay, if you're talking to people who's not in that world, actually maybe they don't understand the terminology. And I remember there's another meeting I had where someone was just like, you're just a kid, you don't know anything, and if you continue with this idea you've got, you're gonna fail and your business idea sucks. And I was like, what the hell? And it was like brutal. I was like, whoa, how do people talk like this? So here's where my naiveness came in, and this is what I didn't realize about entrepreneurship. I didn't realize that I had to be the HR, the marketing person, the salesperson, the legal person, tech knowledge. I didn't realize I had to have all of these skills. I had finance and operational skills from KPMG, which was great, but the rest I really didn't know. The other thing is, you don't get sick pay. You don't also get praise emails, like, if you've done a good job, no one will message you like, oh, well done, you've done a good job on this. And the most stressful part is that you don't get a salary. Like, I miss having a salary. That is the one thing right now where I just sit there and I'm like, oh, I wish I had a salary, because it's hard. And there's an entrepreneur out there. She's an investor, and she's called Cody Sanchez. She's quite big on social media. And I remember watching one of her TikToks, and she was saying that she was looking at how companies, startups fail and what stage the person's at. So she was saying essentially that people who leave their jobs and then go all in to their business are more likely to fail than people who stay in their jobs and start the business off then, because they still have that cash flow coming in, and cash flow is a massive issue when it comes to businesses. And I get that. I'm I get that cash flow aspect because I'm constantly stressed about cash flow now because I have no income. But with entrepreneurship, the one thing that I've had to really learn is that it's the most loneliest journey ever. Like, you're literally on your own. Everything's in your head, and not a lot of people can relate or understand how you're feeling. Networking was a massive game changer for me though, because I started meeting people in different aspects. So like, for example, if someone was really good with marketing or had legal knowledge and things like that, I would just genuinely talk to them and ask them for advice, like what should I be thinking about, what should I be learning. And also they would refer me to really good things to read, watch videos on, and things like that. So I've had to develop and learn a lot being an entrepreneur, and it's a great skill to have now. Like, I'm not joking, like I'm constantly thinking, how can I make a business better? And for example, the other day I was having a conversation with my cousin, and he's just graduating from university and applying for his next, like his grad job. And he applied for a job with, I think he was going to do tax or something like that in some accountancy firm. And I took a step back and I asked him, like, why are you doing tax? Because he's going to eventually move back to Kenya and help with the family business. And I asked him, like, genuinely, how does this add any value to your business? You need to be thinking about it like that. The next 2 years, you're going to be working, but find a job that actually adds value and can enhance your business. Don't do a job for the sake of it. And even he was like, wow, I've never thought of it like that. And I took a step back. And it's only because I've had to learn all of this, of being an entrepreneur, the different aspects where I'm constantly thinking, what am I doing that adds value, or am I just wasting time? It's amazing that my mindset has changed like this, but the learning curve of being an entrepreneur is insane. And if you're going to start a business, there's a lot you need to think about. And I genuinely think you should talk to entrepreneurs before quitting your corporate job and understanding how brutal it is. And also learning a lot more. And I think I do agree with what Cody Sanchez said. It is better probably to start your business whilst working. But I just don't think I could have done that whilst I was at KPMG, because my hours were from 9 to like 2, 3 in the morning. I was working Monday to Friday, and then a lot of the weekends I also had to work. And I wouldn't have had a chance to just take a step back and figure out what I wanted to do. I was extremely exhausted. So in that situation, maybe not. If I had probably a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, then I did this on top, then yeah, that would have been better. But if you are planning to start your own business, just think about cash flow, because it's so important. And also start learning skills. Like, I've done some courses on marketing and things like that because I just needed to learn more about it, because I just don't know a lot. And if you're wanting to start a business, start doing little courses or just gain knowledge on areas that you don't have any expertise on, because it will take you a mile further. And rather than having to pay someone initially, which is things you don't want to do when you've just started a business, it's just better to have that knowledge. And then also eventually, like for example with marketing, I've done a course, right? So I know quite a bit of it. And now I'm talking to a comms expert to help me rebrand and reword certain aspects of my business. So when he's talking about certain things in the marketing terminology, I actually understand what he's talking about, and I get the way we need to be thinking. So it helps me and enhances my knowledge further. But yeah, so these are the little tips I would say of starting a business. Try not to be as naive as I was, because it will be a massive shock otherwise. Last year, there was an event that happened which basically massively disrupted my business. And it's something I hadn't foreseen, because no one could have planned it. But it also put some reality checks into my mind. It's just the bit that if I can't do the work, no one's going to get it done. And so last year what happened was that whilst I was cooking, I cut my little finger, and now you can see it's not even healed properly. But I cut it like over there while I was cooking accidentally, and I cut 2 tendons and a nerve, so I had to get surgery to get it repaired. And I didn't realize that the recovery for this was actually quite brutal. It took me 3 months to recover. And for the first 8 weeks, I actually couldn't use my left hand. It was in a splint, and I wasn't allowed to carry anything, because what happens is that your tendons are all your tendons are connected with like a bunch of tendons here. So if you strain any of them, it can potentially snap the one that the surgeons had repaired. So I couldn't do anything. And that means with my left hand, and by the way, I'm a left-handed person. Don't ask me how I cut my left hand using a knife on my right hand. It makes no sense. No one understands it. I don't understand it. But anyways, so I couldn't write anything because obviously I'm a left-handed and I only had my right hand, and typing with one hand is really hard. And I tried to use AI as much as I could, but AI also still makes mistakes. And yeah, so it kind of took a pause on my business. And this is where I started panicking a lot because, like I said, didn't have any income, but also my business just took a pause. It just had to halt because I couldn't do anything. No one else can. I couldn't work. I couldn't network. Okay, going to networking events was a bit stressful because honestly, I was in also so much pain. And when you go to a networking event, it was just, I had to be careful no one banged into my hand as well. So there were just a lot of things going on. And also I couldn't get ready. It was really hard. Like there were loads of clothes I couldn't like wear because I had this massive cast on. And it was just a struggle. Whereas if I'd been in the corporate world, I would have gone paid sick leave and I could have just chilled for those 3 months and not had to worry about, oh my God, what's going to happen now. And it was honestly such an awful experience. Like I was really down at that point because I was like, okay, I can't cook. I couldn't eat well because I lived alone at that point, and I couldn't cook for myself that much. So a lot of my money then was getting blown on takeouts, and I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't do much. And then because I realized, okay, my business has paused, I stopped going out because I was like, I can't afford to be going out and spending money when I know right now I can't even bring anything in. So there were just a lot of issues at this point. I think I kind of spiraled in that point. Like my mood really dipped and I just had zero motivation. I just was in like a meh phase. I was like, I don't know what to do. I was just stuck. And then I remember talking to one of my friends saying, this is how I feel. And she was just like, well, aren't you practicing what you preach? And I was like, wait, what do you mean? And she was like, you're always talking about the 4 rooms, for example, on social media. Have you been doing any of that? And it was a reality check. Because I took a step back and I was like, I've actually stopped practicing everything I've been working on, self-understanding on myself. So the 4 rooms theory has just been a game changer when I was introduced to it. It's changed the way my whole life is. It's changed the way I feel. Prior to learning about the 4 rooms theory, I was a very chaotic person. Like, I was quite, like, I couldn't just sit at home. I had to be out and about all the time. Like, emotions would run high, and I never felt like calm. And I don't know how to explain it because I feel it now. And it's people who, like my friends, for example, have seen a massive change. They've all said that in the last year and a bit now, the person you were before and the person you are now are 2 different people. They were like, you're so calm. And before, yeah, you were chaotic. And this is the only way I can explain it. So let me explain what the 4 rooms theory is. This is an ancient Indian proverb, and I'm just going to read it. Everyone is a house with 4 rooms: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Unless you visit each room every day, even just to air it, you are not a complete person. And this was quoted by Ramagodin, not sure. Anyways, and this essentially changed my life. So the physical room is about taking care of your physical body. The mental room is about stimulating your mind. The emotional room is just about doing something where, you know, you like acknowledge like how you're feeling, or doing things that you like make you feel really wholesome. So is it like spending time with your loved ones, your partner, your children, your dogs, things like that. And then the spiritual room is not just meditation. It's things like, what do you do, an activity that you just feel like you're just there in life. That's basically it. And prior to me cutting my hand, I had been doing this religiously. It had just become part of my routine. Like even in my calendar, in my diary, I'd be looking at, okay, I have these meetings, this is what I'm doing, but then where are my 4 rooms fitting in? And I'd become really good at it. So whilst I was injured, then I started adapting it. So work was out of the way. I still couldn't work, but I could do things for myself. So I'd make sure I was doing all of those things, like walking, making sure my food was better, fine, even if I was still getting takeout. I made sure they were healthier options than unhealthy options and things like that. And it was just an automatic change. Within a week, my motivation had come back. And even my healing, I noticed like the pain was getting better and more manageable, and I was healing much quicker. And And this is where I'm saying it's such a game changer. This is a free bit of advice, by the way. Like, it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost companies anything, because it's all about what you like doing. My 4 rooms will be very different to your 4 rooms. And that's the one great thing about it. So even though I was not working, so couldn't get any income coming in, the 4 rooms was something I could access for free. And that's great, especially in this current economy. Right now, as much as you can save costs is probably the best thing. I brought back in my walking. In my walking, that's me hitting my physical room and my spiritual room. And for me, it's just this thing. When I walk in nature, I just feel really calm. And it's just a place I just don't think. And then in the mental room, because I wasn't working, I could still read. So I got a Kindle and I started reading books because I'm stimulating my mind. The emotional room, I started journaling and just seeing how I was feeling that day. And I started to try and make more plans with friends. And I explained to them that, look, I can't afford to pay anything right now. So the most I can do is, can we just go to a park and just walk or something like that? And thank God I have very supportive friends, because they all showed up for me and would be like, yeah, let's go for it. And that's what we do. And it was just great. And imagine in 1 week, everything changed. This is something I actually teach corporate clients on, how this is the fundamental basics that people need to embed. So there is a lot more into it, because it's actually not simple for everyone to incorporate these 4 rooms, because some people just don't know how, and because time is also an issue. So I actually, when I go to a corporate client, I will work with them to help them build this within their routine and how it's feasible to their lifestyle, and it's not about my lifestyle. Everything is tailored to you. Imagine if I didn't have that one bit of knowledge, a simple concept that changed my life. I probably would have continued spiraling, and it would have impacted me more negatively. And just by doing one thing, I turned my life around. With confidence, I'm going to give a tip to all of you guys. And you might think that this is such a simple tip, but knowledge is power. If you're at work and someone has questioned what you're doing and you don't feel confident to answer it, it means that actually you might just not know enough about it. Or you might actually know about it, but someone's trying to undermine you. And then that's where other aspects come in, where you need to understand more about your behavior. You understand like why you feel intimidated with certain people and why you don't with certain people. And when you start understanding that, if you do have the knowledge, you can just learn how to talk to them and make sure that they don't hit your confidence. But the basic principle is start with knowledge. Learn a lot about that topic. The next thing is make it into a practical skill. And so what I started doing was I started talking to my friends about it. So if they call me, I'll be like, oh, I learned this. Can I just tell you what I learned? And then they'll be like, sure. So I tell them what I learned, because then this way it gives me practice, because they'll ask questions back. But I learn how to talk about it, and I think of things that I might not have thought of because of what my friends are asking me. So I didn't let that person break my confidence. I let them break it at that point, but then I went back and rebuilt it. And then a few months later, a company actually approached me asking if I could do a leadership workshop for them. And I said, yeah, sure. So I went to that company, did my workshop, and guess what? They loved it. They absolutely loved it, and now they're looking at how I can help them further in a different aspect, and I think we're looking at communications now. So it's great, like it's still a learning lesson. And even though I lost that one client that day and I got shouted at and my confidence got broken down, I learned something that I need to learn how to back myself more and not let someone talk to me like that. And also the expectation that people are going to be nice and say, I'm going to help you in this and that. No, that's not how it works. Confidence isn't about never being shaken. It's about getting back up, stronger, wiser, and louder. So if someone comes and breaks your confidence, honestly, go back and learn more. Go outsmart them. What can you do? There's endless amount of knowledge out there to learn. That is my tip for you, and I hope you take that away. Another big thing that I've had to learn about is attitude types. And when I've been learning about self-understanding, understanding myself more, this is something I came across, which I found really fascinating. Think about it like this. When you're working for someone, you have to get that job done because that is your job. You applied for a specific role and then you're going to do it. So it doesn't matter what type of attitude you have. Obviously it does. It depends on your productivity. So if you're like, meh, this is kind of like what I have to do and you don't really have a positive attitude, you'll still get the work done, but maybe not as effective as someone who might be positive. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. When you're on a salary, you will do the work that you've been told to do. However, when you're an entrepreneur, it's a bit different because your attitude type will drive the way you work and the amount of work that you'll get done that day. And like I said before, there's no one else who's doing your work. And so when I was researching into attitude types, there's 4 types that I found. So there's positive attitude, negative attitude, indifferent attitude, and dark triad attitude. Dark triad is something we'll come back on another topic because that's a whole new level that we need to discuss. But if we look at positive attitude, negative and indifferent, so a positive attitude is obviously someone who's like, yeah, let's do it, and they're always just pushing and they don't really see the downs of it. Then you have negative attitude, that's where people are just always see the bad or like the downside of everything. And indifferent is more where you don't really care, like you don't have like a positive or a negative attitude and you're just kind of there. And that's where I think a lot of also employees might sit in, and we want to shift people to the positive one. But they all have their pros and cons. I'm someone who's quite positive generally. When things get hard, I'll be like, it's fine, I'll figure out how to get it done. And like, you know how like when I quit, I was like, oh yeah, everything's gonna be fine and I'm just gonna start getting clients left, right and center. That's me having a positive attitude. But in that moment, it was technically a downfall because I didn't stop to actually think about loads of things. And this is something I've learned about myself, that I have a positive attitude, which is great, but sometimes it can be a bad thing. And now And a negative attitude is very hard for me to come across. It's only when I'm in like a bad mood. Then I'm like, this is negative, or I'm like, oh, everything's going to shit. But I don't last there for very long. And as an entrepreneur, I need to be thinking about everything. And because my mindset is very positive, sometimes I don't see it all. So I've actually developed little strategies, which is quite cool. So one of my friends, I love going and talking to her about my business and strategies. She's in consultancy, so she gets it and she loves talking about it as well. But when I compare both of us, so I've got a very positive attitude, like I've said, and she's got she's going to hate me for saying this, but she has a negative attitude. She'll find like everything that's wrong with what I say. But I think that's amazing. Because when I go and tell her I'm doing XYZ, this and this, I'm like, oh, so excited. She'll be like, have you thought about this? This could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong. And I'm like, shit, I've not thought about this. So you need to take a step back and actually think about it. So she brings a whole new perspective. But it's something I've had to start training my brain about, that when I think of this, it's kind of like writing a pros and cons list where I'm like, yes, I want to keep going, but I have to be careful. And it's really interesting. So if you think of it in a business terms, in corporate world, in the businesses that I try and go and I work with, that's where you want employees to have more of a positive attitude because you want them to feel enthusiastic about work. You don't want them to have a negative or indifferent attitude about work. But for example, when you're working in a team and thinking about an idea, a positive and negative attitude is quite good to have because you get to see best of both worlds. And that is what I try and bring into this. But like I said, because when I'm doing it alone, it's quite hard sometimes for me to see a different perspective. So this is one way I've found that I've started learning how to train my brain. I actually talk to people who I know who kind of see the downside of things. I'm not saying they're bad people, by the way, and I love you guys, but they just see life in a different light that I don't see, and it's quite good for me. But then on the other side, when you're an entrepreneur, like I said, there are ups, but the downs are really down and they're really bad. And this is where sometimes then I end up having a negative attitude and I'm just sit there, I'm like, I want to quit. Why am I doing this? And I have a lot of self-doubt. And in that moment, sometimes like if I can't get myself out of that negative attitude, I have a friend for that, where she's really positive. So like I'll call her and we speak like every day in the morning and night, and she even sees a change in my voice in the morning. I'm like, yeah, I got this. At night, I'm like, I hate it. And it's nice talking to her, because when I talk to her, she'll be like, no, you're doing really well. Look at where you've come. And she brings in this whole positive attitude, which I need to bring back. And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's actually not that bad. And this is something that I just find really cool. And it's a simple thing that you just bring into business, and you can see the differences it can make in different aspects and operations of your business. And yeah, like I said, again, when you're working for a company, this is not something that you would have really thought about. Companies itself, like leadership, should think about educating people about this, because it can be a game changer. But like I said, when you've got a salary, you know what your job is, it doesn't matter what type of attitude you have. You're going to go get your work done. Fine, the quality might be different having a positive or negative attitude, but you will eventually get your work done. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, the downs can be really hard, and when it's so isolating, it's sometimes really hard to pick yourself out of that. And if it's a person who genuinely does see the downside of life, and you're being an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean you're not gonna be a good entrepreneur. It's just that I think when it comes to the downs, they might impact people like that even harder. But when you're more aware about this thing, you'll be like, no, you'll learn how to pick yourself up and get yourself out of that situation. The other thing, so we're talking about picking yourself and bouncing back up. But now it comes to the reality of being an entrepreneur, because things just don't go the way you plan it. And there are some people out there who need things done in a very specific manner, and if things go off course, it can cause you a lot of anxiety or stress or worry, panic. And there are some people who can just navigate the way through it. I'm someone who, fortunately, like, when I'm thrown something, it probably might knock me down for a day or two, but then I'll pick myself up and I'll get around it, and I'll go like whichever way I need to go. And do you remember earlier when I said my uncle told me that your business plan, this is not going to be a business plan? Well, he's right. I think I'm on business plan, God knows what now. And it's interesting because when I was in university, for example, or like doing my ACA qualification, they spoke about 5-year business plans. And then when I was at KPMG, when we were looking at forecasts for our clients to see how they're going to be doing in the future, it used to be 3 years. But realistically, when I look at it now, I cannot plan for the year. I literally could not tell you. I can say I want to try and reach X amount of revenue, but the way I'm going to go about it, it's really hard for me to stick to that route, because so many things keep changing and I need to be very proactive. And this is where self-understanding for me, because I know I'm quite proactive, it's helped me a lot. But I know other people who've started businesses, and when things are thrown at them, they don't know how to come out of it. And that's fine. It doesn't mean that you can't learn how to be proactive. But when you start understanding these little traits about yourself, it changes the way you think. For example, the last few months, I think I've had quite a few shit things thrown at me, and I've had to change the way of my business, the strategy and everything a lot. I think in the last 3 months it's been quite chaotic. One of the things is, for example, when Trump announced the cutting of DE&I initiatives in the US, and that's trickled down to the UK, because the firms that are based here and their parents are in the US, as long as if the parents in the US say slash all DE&I initiatives, it means even in the UK that's going to go. D&I is somewhere I also try and go through to try and get workshops for. But a lot of the people I'd already approached, because of what happened, they had to cut it. So now I had to think, okay, how am I going to get into this business, because I've lost that one thing. And then now there's also another thing that came up, is like mental health, empathetic leaders. I know I read an article where they were saying, I think after Jamie Dimon's leaked voice note of like how pissed off he was about people being on his phone and how he wanted everyone to come full time back, there was an article on that saying, is the empathetic leadership going now? And it's just also that with mental health and well-being, that it's become such a tick box exercise, and I'm trying to show businesses why it's not a tick box exercise and how it actually can help, that everything that I had planned for has now shifted, and it's becoming more of a strategy rather than an initiative, if that makes any sense. That's another thing, right? When you work in corporate, you're not worried about the strategy unless you are in that leadership role. But we were told what the strategy for the business is, and then you kind of just go with the direction that they say. But when you have your own business, you decide the strategy. And it's hard, because as much as you really want this strategy to work out, there are going to be things that are going to be out of your hands that can really screw you over. So if it's something that you depend on a supply and the supplier goes bust, you're going to have to do something about that. If it's like a customer, they say, okay, I'm going to pull out of this, and they're a major customer and it really impacts your business, you're going to have to think of another way to survive. And that's the hard bit of being an entrepreneur. It's a survival game. You have to find a way. You go from this end to that end, this one, and it's never a straight road. And with this, when there are people out there, like I said, who need everything done in a certain format, great, that's fine for you, and you can be an entrepreneur. But when you know this, then at least you know that when things go out of line, you're able to flex those skills and say, you know what, it's okay. I know I'm feeling panic. It's just because it hasn't worked out, but I can change this and I can reset my mentality. And that's what I think entrepreneurship is. I'm still not a master at pivoting. I do like things done in a certain way, so I'm still learning about that. But it does help knowing that I've got this thing inside of me that keeps me going. But sometimes also the downside of this is that I might, instead of just trying to find, like, going forward, I just switch directions, and I don't know if that's the right thing sometimes. So that's something I'm still learning, but we'll find out soon enough. Hey-ho. So just to wrap this up, there's a lot you don't realize when you work in a corporate space and when you work for yourself. There are so many differences out there, and for anyone who's thinking of doing it, I definitely think, like, when you start understanding yourself better, you're able to navigate your mindset a lot easier. And to be an entrepreneur, I think you need to have a very strong mindset, because this thing can really break you. It's a very hard road. It's really lonely, and there's so much uncertainty, because you just don't know when things are going to go to shit or if things are going to go well. And there's no business, like, I've looked at so many businesses whilst I was at KPMG, and a lot of the deals I worked on, none of the businesses had a trajectory growth like this. They all had their ups and downs. An example I can give you, so I won't say the company exactly, but during COVID, I was working on a deal. It's in the food and beverage industry, and this company was doing really well during COVID because they had adapted to the whole work from home life. And because of that, their sales went insanely high during COVID, and they expanded a lot. So their forecast from that point, they had changed it and said that they wanted to open 100 more stores or something like that. I don't think it was 100, maybe 50. But let's say anyways, whatever it was. They wanted to increase a lot of stores, and we had said, you need to be a bit careful for this. And then I think they were still planning to do that, but they wanted they wanted investment, and hence why they were in that market. But when everyone got out of lockdown, and then it went back to, like, hybrid working, and now it's more going into the office, their sales kind of took a bit of a plummet, and their whole strategy had to change, and they couldn't open the amount of stores that they wanted to. That's that's an example. Another example of a business that I worked on was pre-COVID. It was a maternity clothes line. Pre-COVID, I was working on the deal, and then COVID happened, so we had to pause that. And then during COVID, their sales went high because I guess a lot of people were having kids or babies at that point. And they did really, really well. And then and just when we were looking at the forecast pre-COVID, they were not doing actually that well, and they were struggling. Then obviously COVID happened, and it worked out in the better way for them. But if you just look at that business, right, everything changed. Like, the COVID just changed it. It made it better for them. But for the other firm that I just spoke about, that COVID made it temporarily better for them, but then it was worse off after. And a lot of these things is something that you have to be careful with when you have a business, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And there are certain people out there who need a lot of certainty, and uncertainty can cause a lot of anxiety. And when you start understanding these things, I'm not saying you can't be an entrepreneur, it's just that when you know this about yourself, you're able to deal with these situations better, and then avoid the anxiety bit and not get into that downfall, and you're able to manage yourself better and make better business decisions. You can't make business decisions through emotions. Business decisions need to be well thought out, and when emotions are driving them, you can make very big mistakes. If you've made it this far, just wanted to say thank you. This journey has really tested me in ways that I never imagined and has made me a very strong person now. But what's really kept me going, my superpower, I guess, is self-understanding. The reason I've survived this long, even though I'm not where I wanted to be, is because of self-understanding. It helped me bounce back from my injury. It rebuilt my confidence. It guides how I show up in the world. You can lose money. You can pivot your offer. But if you don't know you, it all falls apart. So if you're thinking of starting something new, a business, a movement, a new chapter in life, the one thing I always say is start with yourself. Start investing in you. Because the more you know yourself, the more you can change everything around you. Thank you for listening. So please hit the subscribe button if you already haven't. Stay tuned for the next episode. I'll see you next time. Bye.